I officially need to report out from opening the closed session. So the closed session finished at 7:19 and no action was taken. Moving on to this agenda, the first item on the agenda is public appearances. We're going to scoot back because now we have a chance for any other members of the public who would like to speak. Come to the microphone, sir.
Thank you, sir. I was going to set up this overhead projector real quick.
I've used that bad boy.
Have you? Okay.
Right here.
Right.
It's not showing yet.
So you have to switch it over. You have to switch this over to there. There we go. I don't know if that's coming in. My eyes are getting old. I'm hoping you can see that. My name is Dwayne DeWitt, and I'm from Roseland. I wanted to thank you for having a meeting at this time. You might think, wow, this is late. But you know, this is a good time for the working public to get to a meeting and perhaps get involved. What I've put there on the overhead is an invitation for you folks, some of you at least, to try to come to Roseland a week from Thursday, the 5th of March. I saw earlier you had an announcement up that you'll be having a listening session at another library branch that evening, starting from 5 till 7. But you could come afterwards. Come over to Roseland and hear what we're talking about, because at 6 o'clock at Roseland School, there'll be a meeting to discuss what happens with the Roseland Village Neighborhood Center. 7 acres of land have been purchased by Sonoma County taxpayers through the Community Development Commission. You probably don't know this, but for 50 years, people I know have always wished there would be a library branch over in Roseland. When I was young, you could just hop on your bike and get downtown here to the old Carnegie Library, and then they built the new one, and we just were thinking, well, you know, as time goes by, we'll get something over in Roseland. But actually, it went out to Rincon Valley. First Cottingtown, then Rincon Valley, and maybe now, third time's a charm, come to Roseland. So this meeting is a visioning process. They'll be talking about what they'd like to have a master developer put in at the site. Other community members have talked about the idea of there being not just a community center, but an educational hub, if you will. A spot where we could have Roseland Library linked in with the junior college, having a satellite campus, working with the school district, Roseland School District, its own independent district, and perhaps even with Sonoma State. Looking into the 21st century, going far down the road, another 50 years, having this spot be right there on this bus line. There's going to be a train coming right near there. It's only a quarter of a mile over that way. Most folks don't realize that. It's just right over there, and it only got divided from Santa Rosa by the freeway, Highway 101. And then it's been like, well, you're on the other side of the tracks, folks, so you're not going to get that stuff. But I believe now we could get it if folks like you with vision and purpose said, hey, folks, politicians, listen up. Now's the time to become more comprehensive and do positive things. The young people over there can learn just as well as anyone else in this county if they had the resources. They don't now, but you folks could be at the forefront and lead the way. With a library branch, we're talking about some modulars first, and we could find funding. Great things could happen. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, and if you can stay around for the agenda, the rest of the agenda, I think you'll see that some news about things will be happening.
News we could use?
News
Oh,
will be
yeah,
coming.
I'll be here then.
Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you for your comments.
I appreciate
All right, moving back down the agenda, item number 7, Commissioner reports. Let's start down at this end with Hillary.
Yes, I attended the Rohnert Park Katahdin Lab meeting this past Tuesday, February 17th. I won't take all of the things Barbara might say. We do have one new member on the lab. We hope to approve a new member this evening, and we have one more interested member, so that lab should soon be at full complement, which is exciting news. I'm sure you all saw the article in the Press Democrat about the library card drive for middle school children, and that featured some of the Rohnert Park Katahdin teen space in their photographs, which was nice. The next lab meeting is April 21st at 4 o'clock. It's a Tuesday at the Rohnert Park Katahdin Library. I also, this past week on the 19th, a Thursday, held a workshop in conjunction with Nancy Kleben, who's the branch manager at Rohnert Park, for the Katahdin Rohnert Park Unified School District as part of their Focus on Instruction series. Nancy and I did a workshop on digital resources for students and teachers. It was attended by about, I think, 6 teachers. It was very well received. Nancy walked them through searching ebooks and e-audiobooks, and I demoed some of the databases available to them. And we also endorsed the library card drive, and we got several requests to take our show on the road and go to some individual schools and perhaps present at faculty meetings. So that was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? At the Healdsburg Friends last meeting I attended, the most specific thing that I drew out of that meeting was they do have a lot of different agendas, but what they do have is $100,000 that's being managed that was implemented by 2 or 3 presidents ago, and nobody seems to know anything about it. So at the next meeting, I've asked the person that's managing that fund, the treasurer of the Healdsburg Friends is going to be there, and so they can explain to us where those assets are, how accessible they are, and whether we're stuck with those people, so to speak. The second thing I just want to talk about is I really want to push the reimagine the library to all of the commissioners here. And there's going to be 4 meetings at 5:30 to 7 in each of your libraries. They're going to be one is in Healdsburg, one is in Rincon Valley, March the 5th, one's March 12th, and one's March 27th. The reason I'm bringing this up is I would like to see each commissioner find a group of people or of what I would call outliers. And outliers would be youth, minorities, anybody that really doesn't use the library that we'd like to inculcate into our great library system. So being that there are only 4 meetings, each of you would have to, sort of pick the one that's closest to your library system and bring those people in. What we're trying to get is a footprint of what people want the library to be reimagined as. And it could be anything from, a film room to what have you. And we need that input in order for our strategic plan to get enough demographic input to be real. That's all.
The Windsor Library has been quite busy. We basically have had something every Saturday in the month. We had our coffee with the director. We got about a dozen people, and I felt we got a very good conversation there. The town of Windsor had a small business expo and the Friends bought a table for the library to go and sort of sell the library to the people there. Had Lego Saturday that was very popular. We had the ebook and e-library presentation that was very well attended. We have an art show starting March 11th, and it will be featuring the art of the middle school kids of the area. Thank you.
On tonight's agenda, we're hopefully approving two new youth members for the Sebastopol Lab. I wanted to mention that the Friends of the Sebastopol Library made $41.50 on their January book sale, which is a little low, but I think they had fewer donations for the sale this year. The next sale is scheduled for May. There's a lovely art show at the Sebastopol branch, and this is the work of artist Sally Briggs alongside that of some of her students from Annalee High School and from Apple Blossom School. I guess that's it.
The Petaluma Lab met, and we had 2 new members, so we've expanded with new members. There was a book sale, but I've heard nothing about it because I've been out of town. I might add that I visited the Encinitas Library on my trip recently, and I'm glad that I had a Kleenex so that I didn't drool as I walked all around the building. It's quite an impressive building with a balcony that looks out over the ocean, and a complete computer lab and an art section with a stage and little nooks and crannies, and it was quite wonderful. I'm wondering, this may be sacrilege, and sometimes, what can happen. If some friends don't have enough books, I know that some other friends have an abundance. Is there a way that friends can share books with each other? Anyway, that's just a thought. Pretty much I'm wondering, I haven't heard a report when our branch manager's back. Is he back yet? No, he's not back yet. Anyway, so we're looking forward anxiously to the return of our branch manager, and thank Kate in the interim. Next.
Santa Rosa will be having their book sale February 27th and 28th. And I will not be able to attend the next meeting in March. And since I represent the county, if I could have the flyer on your meeting, that would be grand. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm reporting out for Sonoma Valley as the commissioner representing Sonoma Valley Library. And I want to report that our friends are organizing a county-wide Friends Forum for fall of 2015. So we have a chairperson of that, and her name is Janet, and she will probably be in touch with other friends. So that's fall 2015 in Sonoma Valley somewhere. Then we just finished our book sale last weekend. We raised $12,000, and we do have a process for what we do with our extra books. So we donate them to various nonprofits in our community, and I would imagine that there's an opportunity for us to give them to other friends as well. That event coincided with music that we had at the library on Saturday. All the chairs were filled. It was very well attended. On April 16th, I've been invited to speak at the Sonoma County Taxpayers Association meeting. I'll be working with Brett to organize how we can be best presented to the Taxpayers Association. They've been around for more than 50 years, and they had invited me, I think, thinking that we would be going out for another revenue enhancement. And since we have met a few times since then, I think it's a good opportunity for me to start to plan for that appearance again. April 16th, it's here in Santa Rosa. It's a luncheon that they have once a month. And last but not least, just looking at the Help Us Reimagine the Library, being that we are in Sonoma, probably the farthest away and not along the 101 corridor, as is Sebastopol. I'm just wondering if we would be able to add one more to Sonoma for reimagining the library. That concludes my report. Thank you.
We reported last time on the lab meeting, but I will report that there are still openings on the Santa Rosa Library Advisory Board. I'd like to say thank you to those who helped put together the library card drive and also to those who helped to get it into the Press Democrat. It was a nice article, so thank you for that.
You're so fast. Friends of the Roanoke Park Cotati Library had an awesome book sale, February book sale. We made over $5,000 for the first time. We did give away 4 giganzo boxes. I mean, these aren't boxes, they're like storage units full of books. And I, interestingly enough, had suggested, I think, somewhere along the line about an All Friends Day and working together and cooperating, and now it's happening, so you have to come to the meetings to find this out. I'm delighted to hear that. We also, I want to mention, had the great help of the Hannah Boys Center. They came over on the day we set up and helped lug books and push books, and they were awesome. We had a supervisor and 4 boys, and they're called Hannah Friends, and if anybody else wants help with their book sales or other community events, they're welcome opportunities, and they were just grand. And so then we all went in the bookstore, and I bought them all a book, and they thought it was cool, and anyway, it was great. So that's kind of the Friends. Friends are doing pretty well. The lab, Hillary reported on the lab meeting, and the only thing I would add is that it's wonderful to have a full complement of people, and one of our new people is the tech librarian at Rancho Cotati High School, so we now have this great link to our high school. They had come to us before and talked about how they didn't have any research capability and stuff, so we're making this link to our educational system. I'm so happy that you did that presentation to the teachers. And I don't know, maybe everybody hasn't seen this really nice packet of materials that went out to the students. And I gather it's the same for all the branches. I don't know, but it's really cool. And it's like it helped me because it's got a list of all the libraries and the phone numbers and stuff. This is what went out to all the 7th and 8th graders in our district. And I don't know if has it gone out through the whole county or not. I don't know.
Kia is nodding her head.
Yes. Fantastic. Anyway, love it. I also wanted to compliment Rebecca and got her picture in the Sunday paper with the Minecraft, and I thought this was really cool. And I did notice in here that you had gotten an original $5,000 grant, and I'm sure our friends and probably many of the friends groups would be more than happy to grant for more of this program, and especially if you can get some more girls involved. If we can get some more girls involved. It said in the paper that only one was. But anyway, I thought this was fantastic and great advertising for the library. And as a commissioner, I am visiting all the branches of our library system. I've got about half done, and it's an amazingly interesting process. The physical structures of these places, the different ways people do things, all the little subtle, creative touches that different librarians and staff are using. So anyway, it's a very interesting process, and I hope I'm not bugging anybody. I'm just trying to educate myself. Thank you.
At the lab meeting this month, Cloverdale Lab approved a change in their bylaws, opening up the possible number of members. So we'll be adding a new member tonight who I think is going to be a good addition to the lab. Cindy, the branch manager, is really, really excited because for the first time, she's actually getting entrance into Washington. She has apparently had some trouble with that over the last couple years, but this year they are reaching out to her. She kind of tried to get to them, but they're reaching to her this time, and it's a very different feel to it. So she's really excited about that. So the card drive, she feels is going to be much more successful this year than ever before. The only other, they have, I believe, started some of the work on the roof. The last leak time kind of motivated them with this new dry time. So I believe that they have actually started the work. I haven't seen it because I haven't been over there, but yes. And the only other thing is signed up for a online class in library advocacy, and I thought it was going to be some little simple podunk thing that might give me some more information. And it's turned out to be quite an educational process and gets into the philosophy and much higher thinking than I was anticipating. So it's turned out to be a really joyful, exciting learning experience that I am very happy to be part of. So that's my report.
Notice about that.
The Guerneville lab will be meeting March 11th, so I have nothing really new to report, but we're really encouraging people to come out if you don't have anything to do on Wednesday night, March 11th. It's a beautiful drive, and it's really a great group. So we're really trying to open it up to the community and the larger community. And I think, as Barbara said, it's a great idea to go visit other libraries if you're not familiar, as a commissioner or as a community member.
Thank you. Since it was already mentioned, I also will not be at the next meeting. So I'll be in Colombia, South America. So I don't even think I'll be attending by phone or Skype. But in any event, okay. Moving on to the approval of the minutes. Before we do that, are there any...
What about the other reports?
Oh, the committee reports. Committee reports. The Director's Evaluation Committee report?
So the Director's Evaluation Committee will begin to schedule its monthly meetings with the Director to start the evaluation process. And at our next meeting, we'll be electing officers for the committee.
Finance Committee report?
The Finance Committee has been meeting up until the February meeting as an ad hoc group. Officially in February, we became a standing committee with our agendas posted and open to the public. The committee consists of Helena, Paul, me, and Reese, and the staff is Brett and Ken, and we selected me as the chair, and Paul is the vice chair, and I'm assuming we'll hold office for about a year or so. We get really nice financial reports from Ken, and we are all learning a lot more about the intricacies of the budget and all the details, and it's pretty complicated, but we're coming along. We appreciate all the information that we get from Ken and from Brett. We do understand that we are receiving about $500,000 more from the increase in the property tax than we had budgeted for, which is wonderful. And after Brett went around and asked all the different branches about their needs and desires and good ideas, that was about $3 million worth of those things, which doesn't match up with our extra $500,000. So the Finance Committee will be looking and evaluating what we can do best, and then we will make recommendations to the full commission at our strategic planning meeting, which is coming up, which should be interesting. We did have a very preliminary discussion about staffing and how our branches are staffed and what kind of criteria goes into how many people are employed in each one, how many librarians, how many techs, and so forth. And we want to get a little better handle on that and make sure that things are proportionate. And I think that will also come to the strategic planning sessions, I hope. And we talked about the audit, of course, and on tonight's agenda, we will be taking action on that. We talked about whether we should open it up to an RFP process, and that'll be on our agenda for later on. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe there are no other committee reports at this point, so we'll move ahead now to the approval of the minutes. Pardon me? That's
additional establishment.
So we're on this agenda. All right. According to this agenda, we don't do that until action item 11, and we're at 8. Okay? All right.
Just point of order here.
Right.
Am I mistaken that there are two agendas?
I believe the first agenda is the agenda that includes the closed. I was a little confused about this also. There's the regular meeting agenda on page 1, and then you turn over and the regular meeting agenda starts on page 2.
Yeah. Well, no, it starts on page 1 again.
It starts on page 1.
I thought it was just the same agenda.
It's the same agenda. So let's move to the page 2, and we'll move to item 8 on that agenda.
Okay.
Okay? I believe that the first agenda was the agenda for the closed session.
No, they're duplicate. It's a duplicate.
It's a duplicate.
The pages are duplicates.
Okay, all right.
Page 1 and 2 are duplicates.
All right.
So where are we now?
We're on page 2, item 8.
I don't have an item 8 on page 2, but
Yeah.
I think I know what you mean.
Yes, you do. That's page 3.
This is page 2.
No, it's page 2 at the bottom.
Oh, 2 of 70.
2 of 75.
Okay.
Okay? So we're on page 2 of 75, item 8, approval of the minutes. All right? Are there any corrections to the minutes before we have a...
I would like the inclusion of the goal to have the system in place to accept gifts by June 2015, and I'd like it in the minutes. I'm sorry, what?
A page number and a line number. And we'll use the page of 75 as our... It was part of the audit.
It's part of number 5.
On page 5 of 75, line.
Okay, it was part of 5.1. It was brought up right after the annual audit report. And we were told that we would have a system in place by June of 2015. Page 5 of 75.
Do you want to give wording for that?
The
commission requests or requires that the plan be...
The commission requires that the plan to receive gifts is, the process to receive gifts is in place by June 2015.
Did you get that, Rebecca? Okay. Other additions, changes, corrections? All right. Usually we have wording for the motion to approve the minutes.
So moved?
So move as amended.
Yes.
As amended. That was moved.
The wording is on the agenda cover.
Page 4 of 75.
Page 4 of 75. Ah, there we go. All right. So it's so moved as amended.
Second.
Okay. Linda. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, one abstention, and the minutes are approved. Moving on to correspondence and press coverage. There's lots of press. I don't think we'll take the time to go through all of them, but why don't I start passing them down and people can browse or look at them. We move on then to the consent calendar. There's nothing on the consent calendar. And so now we are going to...
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Just a comment on the consent calendar. If possible, I just would like to make a request that staff consider suggesting to us before the meeting more items that could be put on consent. I'd like to see more routine items fill the consent calendar in the future, of course, at the pleasure of the chair.
All right, thank you. Any other comments about the consent calendar? By the way, I will ask for public input, but unless the staff wants to be considered public, we have no public in the audience. So they are the public in some ways. But. All right, moving on to action items. The audit for the fiscal year. There is a recommendation to adopt, and there's a motion. Let's proceed with the procedure of having the motion and the second, and then discussion. So moved. Did you get that?
I second.
All right. Is there any discussion or questions? Yes.
So just to confirm, we're on the approve the annual audit?
Right.
And that's the same document that we had before us last time, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that would be, just by way of an example, since we went through the whole thing before, to me that would be the type of thing that I would like to see on consent, of course, again, at your discretion. Thank you.
Any public comment on the approving the audit? All right. All those in favor of approving the audit?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The audit is approved. Let me get my paperwork here together, folks. Moving on to 11.2, which is the on page 46 of 75 for those that are looking for it. It's to finalize the staff development training. We discussed this and gave tacit agreement to it last week. It's a is there anyone who'd like to make the motion?
I so move.
Who said that? Paul? Is there a second? Second. All right.
Paul's have it.
Yes.
So again, we are on item 11.2, right?
Right.
And so I just want to point out that this is where I will make a comment on the motion on the floor, but this is where I don't have a header on my agenda, and I think something went wrong here in the packet because the next item is 11.4, and I'm missing 11.3. But as far as the motion on the floor goes, this is for the library closure for all staff day.
Right.
So I am going to be voting against this. And the reason I'm going to vote against it is because I would think we have too many closed days to the public already. And for us to close another day when the public is expecting us to be open is something I don't want to support. I fully support and value the idea of getting staff together and the collaboration and idea sharing and just team spirit and some of the messages that management can efficiently deliver on a day like that. I just would rather see that happen on a day that we don't have to close to the public. So that's why I'll be voting against this item.
Other comments or on that item? Any public comment on that item? All right, I will call for the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? No for Sanders. All right. Next item is 11.3, and we don't have an actual page for that. It's basically to formalize the fact, without a motion, that we're... do we need a motion to establish... What? Okay, so we will need a motion to form the standing committees. And let me review the standing committees that we're establishing, and as far as I know them, the membership. And if I've forgotten names, please forgive me. The first is the Finance Committee, which is a standing committee, and those names have already been given. That's Paul and Helena and Reese and Barbara. Forgive me for not saying last names. And then the next, yes? There's Paul Grill. Okay. And the next committee that we'll be formalizing tonight is the Revenue Enhancement Committee. And that committee its job will be to explore alternative forms of revenue for the library. And the committee membership is Reese, myself, and Paul. Are you on that? No. Linda is on that. She may not know it now, but Linda's on that, and Barbara. And the idea on that committee is to have a representative finance committee, a representative to coordinate with the library, Sonoma County Library Foundation, to have the chair on there, and the revenue committee chair. And so, am I forgetting anyone who is on that committee? Hillary's not sure. You're on that committee as you're able to attend?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so that's the second committee, the Revenue Enhancement Committee, the Finance Committee. The Director Evaluation Committee is the third standing committee. And that committee is Helena, myself, Hillary, and Paul Grill. And the fourth committee is the Public Relations Committee, and that's David Ebright and Paul Heavenridge and Randall and Reese. So those are the standing committees. Now, it was mentioned earlier that that's all the committees we can have, but who knows? And the other issue is that I'm asking that each committee establish a chair, and that because they are standing committees, I'll remind people that they are subject to the Brown Act. And what I've been able to see in my reading is the extent of that is that they will need to announce their agenda 72 hours, the agenda and meeting place, 72 hours before the meeting and have an agenda. We're searching in further information as to whether they will need minutes and have those minutes posted. I couldn't find anything when I was doing my search, but we have a request into council about that. So for the committees, that will be their charge to get started. Yes.
Thank you. Since we don't have an agenda item for this, I have a question about the financial implication of creating committees and what the staff time is required to support them, and whether staff will be present, I imagine, taking minutes at all these meetings. I just would like to know what the cost is for the library to establish committees.
Ken and I have talked about the minutes, and as of now, the staff haven't been asked to take minutes for the committees. And I've asked council if minutes are required, but as of now, staff haven't been asked to do the record keeping for those groups.
And for the Finance Committee, staff is there.
Yeah.
For the Standing Committee, for the Revenue Committee, staff is there. And for the Evaluation Committee staff, I mean, you'll be involved, but you're not a member. There's no staff requirement. And pardon? Patrick was involved in today's meeting, but generally he won't be otherwise. And that will be closed session meeting. So that's just to have public input before that is what will matter. And then the The PR committee, I'm not sure about what staff requirement will be regarding that one. And did you want to say a little bit about the PR committee and your thinking about it? And
basically, just what our purpose would be. I think there are three things primarily, and that's to develop, promote, and protect the library's brand. Another purpose that we would have in mind is to raise awareness to the library's value to the communities we serve. And then finally, that we would use that committee's work to help build strong, supportive relationships with the community, business, and government leaders in our communities.
All right. Okay. Do people have hesitation about any one of those committees, or can we have a blanket approval of those standing committees? Is there anyone who says, well, we need 3, but we really don't need that committee? All right. Can I have a motion to approve the establishment of those standing committees?
So moved.
Second? Second from David. All right. Any public comment regarding the establishment of the standing committees? There being none, any further discussion from commissioners? All those in favor of establishing the standing committees?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Now we're at the issue of the auditor selection and engagement for the 14-15. Ken, do you want to start us on this, or should we start with the Finance Committee?
Either way, I can do it.
Okay, why don't you start?
Give you a quick overview. As it says there, we've had Beals and Soper for the past 8 years do our annual audit. And so the question for the commission is whether we engage them again for the 2014-15 audit, or whether we issue an RFP for audit services. And best practices say if you should enter into a multi-year agreement for a number of reasons. Continuity. There's a big learning curve the first year that new auditors come into an entity, so it gives them time to make up some of their costs that they put in the first year if you have a multi-year agreement. So that's the motion or the agenda item that's in front of you right now. It's been discussed at the Finance Committee, and they thought it was good to bring it forward, the question, to the full commission.
All right. And as I understand it, there are basically 2 options. In terms of the motion. One of the options is to continue with Beals Soper, and the other is to do the request for proposal. Let's hear from the Finance Committee, and I see your hand, Joanne. So, Finance Committee, what did you discuss?
Well, I think, we've been well pleased with the current auditor, so it's nothing personal about that. And I think we were talking about just putting out the RFP, and of course everybody can bid on it, including our current auditors. And I was interested in the attachment here where it says public sector audits, you might have trouble getting responses to the RFPs. So I don't know what will happen, and I'm, of course, a little bit concerned about how much work this is going to require the staff to put out an RFP, because I'm sure it's not simple. But I think our feeling is that the overall feeling of the Finance Committee was it is time to put out an RFP and see what the next steps might be. Either go along, based on the responses, continue with our relationship with the current auditor, or see what else might be out there. And again, we're looking at multiple year connection because of spreading the cost over several years. There's a huge upfront learning curve. You get a new auditor and they have to learn everything. So if you have a multi-year contract, you can spread those costs out. So anyway, I think this is well documented here in the attachment about best practices. So nicely attached to our agenda.
Joanne, I thought.
Thank you. Just want to ask whether a couple things. Is it possible to have what the committee recommendation was in the agenda item? Would that be appropriate?
I don't think we came up with a recommendation. We talked about it, and we just felt that it was important to bring it to the commission at this point to make a decision, because it would be the time to put somebody in place if that was what was needed. So I don't. You did talk a little bit about the pros and cons, Ken, of doing an RFP. How long would an RFP take?
My next question was, how much would it cost to have the RFP? Because I know that has to be written and customized to the library. It seems like of all the things agencies do, public agencies, this RFP would be somewhat routine, and you would be able to take as much from somebody else as possible. But I realize that, it's still, once you issue an RFP, there are lots of burdens of deadlines and responding to proposers' questions and all that kind of stuff that has to happen. So I see the fiscal impact as blank on this.
Well, the fiscal impact would be staff time, which, is always a little bit hard to put a number on, but at the same time, that's our job. So it would take some time, some research to get underway to make sure we're doing things correctly, find a number of firms to send it to, yeah. Right. We did a RFP for the strategic plan recently.
So knowing how that came out, I hope we have more bidders that we had, and this may be a little more of a common kind of service to obtain than what we did for the strategic plan. Given our workload and the other priorities facing this organization, is an RFP, and I was prepared to support the first motion that we do go out for this. In your professional opinion, do you think this is a top priority this year to do an RFP?
As far as best practices go, in the commission looking at that, it would probably be a good thing to do. From a staff standpoint, there is the work involved. It's not only the work to get the RFP. When the audit comes and it's somebody new, it's not only more difficult for the audit firm, it's a lot more time consuming for staff. There's an argument that says it'd be advantageous to have someone that's familiar with the operations of the library, since we just implemented a new finance system, and it'd be good to get a good solid audit under our belt and get rid of some of the comments that Will talked to you about last year. So those are some of the pros to staying with the current auditor. The cons or the pros for getting a new auditor are new eyes and things like that. So.
Comments, Paul?
I would, that's exactly what I was going to ask, so thank you. It seems to me we're going through a lot of changes in a short amount of time, and we have certain priorities, and I would tend to lean toward keeping our auditor for another year, with looking to the future next year, maybe as we get some of the important things that we're working on, the staff's working on right now, get some stability, and then go out to look for another auditor. Because I understand about best practices and not keeping the same auditor forever. But if I had, it'd be my inclination and gut feeling right now, if we had to vote on this, I would keep our existing Beal Sofer auditor for one more year.
I'd agree with that.
Are you looking for a motion?
Not quite yet.
Not yet.
We have a choice of two motions, and I think it's going to be most useful to hear some input and then have one person make at least one motion. Yes.
Yeah, I've been thinking some about this since the finance meeting and our discussion in that meeting. And I'm thinking that kind of the same thing that Joanne and Paul are thinking is that we've got so many changes going on, so much under our belts, that we have to do. You're learning the new system, and it seems to me it'd be difficult to come back with some solid answers for a new auditor. So maybe holding off for another year might be wise, unless there's some really strong reason why we need to make the change, other than best practice.
Other questions or comments? Is someone wanting to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Which one would you like to make?
I'll go with door number 2. I move that the Sonoma County Library Commission authorize the library director to engage Beal Soper to complete the fiscal year 2014-2015.
I'll second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any further comment from commissioners regarding that item? Any comments from the public? All right, there being none, I will call for the question. All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. We're moving along quite nicely here. Contract for council. We have no document regarding that, but we want to discuss the issue. All right.
Right. The discussion item, just looking for some input. The county council asked us if we would like to renew our contract with them, and we're just looking for some direction from the commission if they're happy with what they received from the county council, or if not, we can go out there and look elsewhere for different council.
I would like to move that we table this until we have an agenda item. And I know that's a motion. It takes a second just to get it on the floor. But if we could at least get it on the floor, and I can explain why I think we should wait further. But that's my motion.
We're not moving. This is a discussion item.
Well, how can we make a decision about what we should do if we don't have an agenda item in front of us?
I mean, a document?
Well, it says item 12.1 is 12.2 we have a report, 12.1 we don't, 12.3 we do. All these things we have documents in here for, but we're supposed to discuss something that I don't have any information on. And how much do we spend on a county council? Who are the other potential, what do they do? How many hours do they bill us for? I mean, I don't have any.
Okay, so you would like to have this moved to another?
We can move it to the very next, table it to the next meeting. That would be my motion.
Okay, anybody? That's a motion to table it?
We need a second.
Is there a second? Second?
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Discussion?
Aye.
Discussion?
Pardon me?
Discussion?
Discussion, okay.
I tried to catch you before. I agree with Joanne that it would be nice to have some fuller information before we bring it forward, like, the details on how much we spent annually and, how hard it is to go find somebody else and so forth, and maybe what other libraries do and, that kind of stuff. So.
What criteria would be for a good?
So not just table it, but.
Yeah, how long have we been with them and pros, cons?
Okay. All right, anything else before the vote? Vote to table this to the next meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the director's report, which is verbal, and then we have the management report, which is in writing. So, Brett?
Okay. Just a few things I wanted to share with you. Some updates on the strategic planning process. As you've seen tonight, the community meetings have been scheduled. Joanne mentioned citing a few more. I think the challenge with that is between the general community meetings that we wanted to schedule, the meetings with staff throughout the county, the meetings with some of our internal committees such as the library management team and the labor relations team. We've got focus groups with specific entities around the county like business owners and leaders, the philanthropic nonprofit folks. So collectively, there was just a lot of meetings to schedule, and we've really done our best, I think, between staff time and the folks that we contracted with. So that's why we weren't able to cite them at every library. So the results group is going to meet with the commission on March 23rd. And then right now the plan is to have a written plan in place either in May or early June. So the timeline has slipped a little bit with getting all of these community meetings and staff meetings scheduled. Wanted to give an update on what's been in the management packet the last couple months, and that's an opportunity to expand our square footage a little bit in Occidental. One of the tenants has moved out, and we've been working with the property manager. But we do have an opportunity to about double our space, where we'd go from about 250 feet to about 575 or so. It would cost us about twice as much for the lease a month, but I really think that community would appreciate having a space bigger than what they have now. It's a very small space.
And just before you proceed, since it's pretty much new commissioners, what are the operating hours of the Occidental and Forestville stations?
Can you remind me?
I believe it's 20 hours a week, 12 to 5. So is it more than 50?
Do you want to go up there, Kim?
Oh, you have it there? What's it, Barbara? Barbara has it.
This is from our packet that going out to the kids, and it has the opening hours.
15 or 20?
What hours are we? Which one are we talking about?
Occidental and
Occidental.
Forestville.
3 days a week or 4 days a week?
I think it's 3.
Wait.
I think it's 3.
3 days a week.
Occidental is open on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday from 12 till 5.
Right. So that's 15 hours a week, 3 days a week.
How about Forestville?
Forestville is open. Must be under F. Okay, is open Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday from 3 to 6:30. Kind of odd hours. So 3.5 hours times 4.
14.
The Guerneville library manager also oversees the Occidental Library. So one thing that the manager at Guerneville has been doing is talking with her staff and seeing if we were to have a bigger building, might we be able to send some staff to Occidental, perhaps to be open a few more hours, and also to really take advantage of the additional space where we could now do things like story times and cite a few events out there.
Other comments or questions? I had one, obviously,
Okay,
the tip of my tongue. I'm wondering about usage, and it sounds like increasing hours is increasing expense a bit, and how does that look into the whole broad picture of the budget, and so forth? Those are just, I don't necessarily need an answer now, but those are the questions that come to mind for me.
Yeah, an initial answer on the staffing would be, if we could, if the scheduling at Guerneville would allow us to send some of those folks to Occidental, we would. So there wouldn't be an additional cost with that. There would be, and Ken's worked with the manager in Keogh to get some initial costs. We'd probably use the additional space as a very small space conduct story times and to put on very modest events, and also to add a computer or two. So that would primarily be the expense, other than the increase in lease would be the technology piece. Fairly modest. Also wanted to give an update on Roseland. It's in the packet this month, but Ken and I had another round of meetings with the Community Development Commission and some representatives from Supervisor Carrillo's office. Really, this time around, we talked a little bit about what we guessed some of the cost would be if the county or the Community Development Commission were to put a temporary building in the parking lot of what had been the Albertsons. And after the conversation, Ken and I said that, we felt within our current budget that we could send some materials to that site, and also technology, so computers. We said that we would hope that the county could fund any equipment, obviously pay the lease on the building. And then we also asked the county to consider funding the staffing costs, which would probably, our preference would probably be to staff that facility with what we call extra help staff, but it would be on-call staff that we would hire and train. So it's my understanding at the supervisors meeting next week, that project's going to come up for conversation and may or may not get funded at some level. I think it's a very exciting possibility for us to get a modest library presence in Roseland. I think it would be open a very few number of hours a day, perhaps Monday through Friday, somewhere around when school lets out, maybe to 5 or 6 at night.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I was wondering about what services are provided in the 2 rural libraries now. Are there any books out there, or is it all just pick up, reserve items?
No, both the Occidental and the Forestville libraries have a pretty good small collection.
Oh, they do.
All areas, kids books, adult fiction, nonfiction, some movies, just put into a pretty small footprint. But I was impressed when I went out to both. There's definitely a good number of books in both the facilities.
Great. Thanks.
So you're saying that next Tuesday at the meeting of the board, that an agenda item to be voted on by the board will appear next Tuesday?
Yeah, when I looked at their agenda, it's phrased pretty much as the entire Roseland project, kind of what that flyer is that the gentleman handed out tonight. I believe that there's an agenda item for the county to move some supplemental funding towards.
My understanding of agenda package and agenda items is they have a budget and they have a line item when they go to the board members, and we should be able to see that if we're asking the county for money or we're asking them for some kind of partnership. That it's my understanding those items are written 2 weeks before they appear, and that might have been something we should have seen.
I did look at the agenda packet from the county when it came out, and unless I missed it, the agenda item
It's just for the whole package.
Detail is a detailed budget.
Okay. Thank
What
you.
Ken and I discussed today is after we have a better idea next week of what the county intends to do at that site, if there continues to be talk about inviting the library in to, be a tenant in a temporary structure, what Ken and I can do from the library's perspective then is put some specific costs to the project and bring it back in March for you all to review.
So the county didn't ask for any information or any money information from you, just the idea of the project?
What they asked us for is a list of what they thought the books and the technology would cost us, and we gave them that dollar amount.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
If someone goes to that meeting of the Roseland that was announced this evening, and I think you said you maybe, I think it would be nice to be overt about saying that the library does not the Library Commission, Sonoma County Library, does not provide buildings, and that Roseland is not a part of the city of Santa Rosa. So were there to be a facility in that area, it would be a county responsibility. And I don't know whether it's possible to clear up misconceptions, but it's important to clarify that, I believe, because speaking historically when I first came on the commission centuries ago, we were hoping to do a library in Roseland, and there were the two issues. One is the building and who would build it, and secondly, what it would cost us to staff and supply it. And our issues are staffing and supplying, although we'd like to have, but I think it's important that public understand that. Yeah.
I'm sensing maybe there's something happening that I didn't realize. So, but maybe I'm wrong. So if you would clarify, Brett, that the Board of Supervisors is contemplating establishing library services in Roseland, and they've asked us to tell them how much that would cost.
What I think's happening is they have 7 acres that it's going to take probably several years to develop whether that's housing or dual use. And what they've thought they might do in the interim is put a temporary structure in that parking lot and then invite various agencies in to populate a room of a manufactured home. So perhaps the library would get the living room, and then the Santa Rosa JC might get a bedroom. So they've asked us if they were to put a temporary structure in that parking lot, would we be interested in occupying part of that? So that's really as far as things have gotten. I thought it would be very foolish to immediately say no, because it might be our opportunity to get something there where we've struggled to do that, as the gentleman said, for decades.
I would agree with the comment that if we have a representative there, which I think is a great idea because it shows we care, we ought to be pretty clear about what the information is that our representative, Linda, is going to be able to say. And I'm not sure, we know enough to say anything. And so
we don't know enough, and I know you've met with Supervisor Carrillo, and I'm happy to go to the meeting and just listen to see what's going on. Sure, we can talk about it, and you've given the numbers of those things, but who is the leader on this item? Who's presenting the item, Carrillo?
It sounds as if by the flyer, this is a community meeting where the county says if we were to do something temporarily in Roseland on that site, what would that look like? And I'm sure that I would imagine the county has talked to various agencies and seen if if they would have interest in sending either materials or staff to a temporary site.
So whatever the outcome of that meeting is, I can read it in the minutes of the board, but the other thing is I'm quite willing to go to that meeting on that day and just listen. And the message is we don't do buildings, and I'm just here to listen to see what the proposal is, and I make no promises. I'm there as kind of a recorder of what's being said. Now, are you going to be there at that meeting?
Yeah, Ken and I both have it on our calendars.
Okay.
And
all right.
We've certainly been clear, and I think that's the reason why the county has talked to us, is I think they're very clear because they're a JPA member that the library doesn't fund facilities, and I think that's why, they've wanted to gauge our interest in if they were to provide the facility temporarily. Is there anything that we could do in it?
Well, that I'm fully prepared to go and to listen as the county representative, and you and Ken can take the lead, and you've been having the conversations with the supervisor, but it's probably a good idea that I'm there as part of the commission. And so I'll see you there.
I totally appreciate you going. But I'm curious too, and concerned that maybe, and perhaps I'm reading something wrong into this, but is this setting a precedent that if in my community that I represent, Sonoma Valley, we have a very underserved Springs area, and it's a population of, I think, about 20,000 people that don't have a library. We have a teen center, and so if we have a teen center and we say to the Sonoma County Library Commission, we have the building, we want to have library services, does that mean that anybody who has a building can invite the library and we're just going to go off and consider establishing library services in that community? I'm curious about the process.
Well, the process is communication. So if your question is if that community were to call me on the phone and say, we're very interested in having a library in our community and we can offer something, will you talk to us? It would be absolutely. That's what it was in Occidental when we have a group of interested citizens that are looking at using the county building in Occidental right now that's a community center. They've said to us, would you meet with us? We'd love to gain control of this facility and invite the library in. Ken and I said, that sounds interesting. And we went out and talked to them. So absolutely, if any community group in the county, whether it's Lantern in Sebastopol or whichever, if they want to talk to us, we'll listen.
My response, and I think you've brought up the point that's a little, is the broad picture. And I think it's a piece of the strategic plan. And, speaking from history, presence in Roseland has been crucial since forever. And so this sounds like a golden opportunity. But for me, I think it's important that we look at our entire library service and how are we providing the best service for the most people throughout the county. And so my concern is the piecemealness, and we want to jump on the train while we can, but on the other hand, how does it look in our broader picture? How does it look to have, we do want to, part of the plan, I hope, will be that we have something so when something in Roseland comes up, we can go, yes, that's part of a whole plan. And the Springs is another part of an area. It came up in the JPA committee meetings of how to represent and how to provide services. So it's direction, but it's also hope is that we don't meet this on a one-by-one basis, but that through the strategic planning, we come up with this is where we want to go, so that when some flag comes up, it doesn't get saluted while some other flag needs to be raised and dealt with. That's my concern.
Yeah, I mean, it was my understanding that's why with the new JPA that it's written in there that, a facilities master plan must be created. It's either every 5 years or 10 years, but it would be to do exactly that, where you would look at population density and other factors, and you would have teed up in that plan, which communities were slated to receive libraries, what they would look like once built, what libraries are due for maintenance, but I would think that would be, why you all agreed that a facilities master plan was important.
Just one comment. I agree it should be in the facilities master plan. It should also be part of our strategic plan. And to not forget what supervisor is involved in the district. If we're talking about the Springs, we would want to be talking to Susan Gorin as well, in the same way you're doing with Supervisor Creo. We need to keep that county connection. Thank you.
I mean, for example, Sebastopol has got the committee going to work to build a new library, and that's wonderful. That library. But once that new library is done, it's going to need probably more staff, more equipment, more materials. And so I think it needs to be looked at from the mountaintop, not from the...
And I understand that, but we have to be flexible enough to look at needs. And if we we have been looking at Roseland for years. Roseland's a hot topic right now. They're looking at healing and also the springs of the potential. And I think this is a real opportunity, but I won't let my enthusiasm, I'll just be the observer there. But I think we need to also look at a need that's been there for a long time, and how do we do outreach to underserved audiences? Roseland is one way, the Springs is another. And just keep that in mind. Thank you.
A couple other things. We finally hired a central library manager, so Patrick can share any information on that. And I did form a small group, as the commission suggested last month, to start exploring when we may want to go for another ballot measure. That group's met once. Right now it's Ken and I and Reese. And for our next meeting, what we decided to do is really call together a group of advisors and experts that we can ask questions of. So we invited the dean of the Santa Rosa JC Library, knowing that they just successfully passed a bond measure. We contacted the group Every Library that helped advise us during Measure M. I contacted the Marin County directors since they've recently passed a measure. I've reached out to SEIU, the county, and also Godby and Associates, which is the polling group that we used last time around. But at this point, we thought it'd be good to get some folks around the table and just ask some questions of them. So that's where that's at. And lastly, I wanted to invite Mike up for just about 1 minute. I wanted him to give you an update on an opportunity that we may have to significantly reduce some of our internet costs in the coming year.
Hi. So one of the things that we've been working on at the library is joining a consortium with a group called CENIC, which is Corporation for Educational Network Initiatives in California. They are partnering with the State Library in Khalifa, which is a statewide library consortium for purchasing of technology products. The main gist of it is it's an opportunity to exponentially increase our bandwidth while potentially reducing our costs considerably. So we've been working on that for a few months, and it's getting rather, heated or exciting as far as what's out there and what's the time frame in which. But it's a statewide educational network that's been around since late 90s, connecting kindergarten through university level institutions and museums as well to gigabit speed internet connections. And what that could mean for us is connecting our central branch at a gigabit speed and then increasing our branch speeds tenfold while additionally adding Guerneville and Cloverdale to high-speed connection, which would increase them exponentially as far as what's available for their staff and public.
There's no downside. It sounds like it's all fantastic.
Sounds like birthday,
faster
Christmas,
and cheaper,
Hanukkah,
and why wouldn't we do it? And how did it pop up?
Yeah, the time frame, it's a crunch timeline, and so that's one of the things that we're working through right now. There's also some investments that we would need to do as far as putting technology in the branches, different switches and routers. Some, it would be reworking our network, so there would be some staff time included. And then it would be the first year investment, we would have to go through a full cycle in which to catch up for the E-rate distributions, the reimbursements.
But it was eventually it's money savings. It's faster and it saves money.
Yes, that's the whole idea. It's pretty exciting. It's I've joked to him. It almost sounds magical at times, similar to your reaction. But after the initial investment, the return on investment is quite marked. Yes, 10 times faster than what we have, and adding additional branches to that mix, and about half as much. Yes.
Is there a timeline when we have to make that decision?
We're working on it now. That's in my opinion the biggest drawback right now is the timeline. This is the first year that they've extended. The It's been around for the educational institutions for many years. This is the first year that the state library, California State Library, is extending it to the public library community. And because it's the first year, the timeline is contracted. So we're working with Khalifa, who is the aggregator of the opportunity, to see when they would need the contract. So we're trying to get that in place, and so we would be needing to start making decisions within the next month, this February and then into March. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so what do we spend as a line item budget, just sort of thumb-wise now?
It's in the budget on the next page.
Oh, geez. So it's
within
probably
$1 million. Keep it within $1 million.
I think it's
well,
in
we
the
get
budget.
E-rate, and that's why it's complicated. So we get 60% reimbursement on all of our telecom stuff. And so, and the data lines between the branches, not the internets. So we spend roughly about $7,000 with AT&T a month, and then another $1,400 a month with Comcast. Of that, the AT&T, I'm thinking is why I'm looking up here. The AT&T gets reimbursed out of that $7,000, 60%.
So maybe we have a cost of $4,500 a month for all that?
Roughly.
Something like that?
Yeah.
And that's yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So we're talking about almost possibly cutting that in half, and there's an exponent of around 10 times bandwidth speed?
Yeah, the undiscounted prices would rise from that 7,000 to 10,000, but then the reimbursements would be roughly about 10 cents on the dollar. So that would drop that down to from the 10,000, or from the, it would 80% E-rate, and then another, the California Teleconnect Fund is on top of that. And so it would reduce it by at least 80%, so that we're looking, rather than the 10,000 all the way down to like 2,000 a month for the AT&T, and then the Comcast would be another 14 on top of that. But again, for tenfold speed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I know I know you don't have the answer to this, but equipment costs as you upgrade. Do you have a?
Actually, I do have an answer.
Oh, you do
for
that.
The switches are $650 a piece, and we would need a new switch at each branch. So we're looking at about, say, 11 branches. Oh, geez.
$7,500.
Yeah. Say $85,000 to $9,000 for switches.
But then there's grant money available for that.
And then there's a grant opportunity that if we meet that deadline, then they're looking at reimbursing us for all of the equipment costs as part of the join up that's being offered for libraries joining up with Scenic and through Khalifa.
Joanne?
Thank you. Well, I congratulate you for embarking on this, because I think it's the way of the future, and we're not going to cut back on the demand, right?
Right.
So that said, I also wanted to just ask a question about on page 56 in this regard. There's my branch manager, Lisa, it sounds like she's doing an evaluation of a music streaming service. And my question, it says it's called FreeGal. Is that kind of like Spotify and Pandora? Is that kind of thing? And if it is, if you know, this music streaming service, how will that, I think that's a pretty attractive thing for our patrons, our youth especially. How will that work with your library card on this music streaming?
Well, I had free at the last two places I worked, so it is a lot like Pandora. How it works is library users usually have a number of songs that they can download a week, so you may get 3 songs or 4 songs a week, and then the library pays, basically we pay a certain amount per song.
Do they get to keep those songs, or is
Yeah.
it like a book? They check it out for as long as...
No, and that's what's unique about the frugal is you get to keep the song, although I think that they're moving towards a streaming service versus a download where it's almost exactly like Pandora then, but you can select the song you want instead of Pandora where you enter a song and it takes an hour or so to get around to it. Yeah.
Well, I think this the kind of thing that we should really blow it up and to public. It's really got a lot of appeal. It's a sexy project to go after.
It is. It's also kind of expensive right now for us. It's $30,000 a year, and it does provide 3 downloads per week per patron, and a streaming for up to 3 hours per day per patron. So they have the entire Sony catalog. They have a lot of other music publisher catalogs at this point. They don't have the Beatles or the Stones or the Dead, but they have a lot of stuff. So, but Dylan is on there, yes. So you can hear the new Sinatra album.
I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you stepping up. And I know it's getting late, but maybe there's something that's underused that we can eliminate to make room for something like this. It's really popular.
Any other questions or comments about the management monthly activities? I might add that the knitting group meets in Petaluma. All right. Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to just briefly get back to the strategic plan process. I'm just been so excited about this happening, and tomorrow I'm going to go down and make a brief presentation to our Roanoke Park City Council just to report in as their commissioner and how we're all doing and stuff like that. And so, I'm going to take these flyers. I am disappointed that in a big active branch like we have, there's no meetings, and it does require people driving down basically during rush hour to Petaluma, I guess, is where people would go, or maybe out to Sebastopol. But I'm just to feel a little bit, frustrated that there's not any real obvious, easy way for people in Roanoke Park, Cotati, our region, to participate in this. And I guess that's kind of a whine, but I would just, and I thought the same thing for Sonoma. I mean, there's kind of northwest, east, and south, but there's northwest and there's north and south and west, but there's no east. And anyway, I just really wanted to have a lot of voices from library users as well. And I know it's really hard to organize these things, and it's really hard to get, all this in motion and stuff like that. But anyway, I just felt kind of disappointed because I really want to talk this up in our branch, but I really don't think that most people from our community will go out to one of the other branches to participate.
I could make a comment on that. I mean, I know that people will be coming from the Cloverdale branch to the Healdsburg branch, and I know people will be coming from Windsor to the Healdsburg branch. I know that a large mailing has gone out to all the friends. I guess my reference point was how hard it was to get people to turn out and follow up on Measure M, and I feel a little bit like that now. Paul down at the other end has talked about how stretched our whole staff is, and I think that that's true, but I think we'll get a turnout, and according to our strategic planners group that is consulting us, 10 or 20, 25 people at each one of those meetings will give them enough critical mass to make some good decisions.
And I hope I'm wrong.
Pardon me?
I said I hope I'm wrong. I hope people from our community do go someplace else and get their voices heard.
Well, that's why I mentioned earlier, if each commissioner were to go out and ask 3 or 4 or 5 people, and you could get each of those to ask 3 or 4 or 5 people, you've created critical mass. You're just sprinkling some seeds.
Paul, just for your information, I am having some difficulty getting people there from Cloverdale.
Yeah.
Just want you to know that.
Thanks.
I was going to tell you later, but I'll tell you now.
Thanks, Reese.
Yeah, we need to move on. So is there something that you wanted to say, Rebecca?
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to also mention that we are creating a survey that contains more or less identical questions to what will be asked at these community visioning meetings for people who can't attend, and they will be available in the branches in paper form and also online.
Okay.
A very good point.
All right, thank you. Let's move along. It's getting late. Management and monthly activities, performance management is improving a bit. We're still in the 90s percentile. Financial report. But first of all, anything people want to say about the performance management report? Okay. Monthly financial report. Any questions, statements about the monthly financial statement? Questions people have? I see something circled on your sheet. Yes.
I always have stuff circled. So in the spirit of time, just want to make a request that we have the column titles carry over from one page to the next. Thank you so much, Ken. I know you can do it.
Yes, I've done it before.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Any questions about the actual spreadsheet numbers?
I just want to thank you for putting the line item numbers on some of the summary. So thank you for that.
Okay, the next issue there is 12.4, the progress report on goal 3, which is establish and implement best financial management practices. Does the Commission have any questions or comments about this document?
I have a question about 3D, which is conduct a physical inventory of fixed assets. Is that like the books and DVDs, or is it the furniture?
That's the furniture and the bigger equipment, and we discussed that last month with the auditor here, and we're going to move that to next fiscal year. But it is the big stuff, trucks, computer equipment, servers, the bigger items in the library.
Do you think the transition to the new financial system will be over sometime?
Well, with a financial system like that, I think you're always learning. So the quick answer is probably no, because there'll always be something new and a better way of doing things and better reporting and things like that. But as far as the basics go, yes, and I think we're about there now. We're currently feeling in the budget and finance staff feeling very comfortable with the new system, and as we've discussed before, we're documenting all the new procedures and steps we need to take to get the job done daily.
Okay, any other comments on that goal? No. Everybody stand up, wiggle. We've got just a few more things to do. All right, now we're at the 12.5, the wonderful, colorful document of yellow, orange, and white. And the policies, the overall library policy audit report. Not all of these, obviously, are related only to budget and finance. And some of these have been around for a while. But I do appreciate the revision to the commission dates that are on there at the end. But for example, the gift policy, we had said we wanted that done by June 15, and it's listed as October 15. A few months in difference. Do we need to have a discussion about the date on that one? Linda, you were...
To me, it's a priority among a lot of other things here. That's why I said
June.
That's why I wanted it documented. If it's in place, well, right now we don't have a way to accept money. And to me, we could look at other organizations and their gift policies, other libraries, the JCs, Sonoma State. This should be something that am I oversimplifying it? I could be, that we couldn't have it by June 2015?
No, I think June 2015 is doable. Some staff have already been looking at other entities and their gift acceptance policies, and have started working on that, right?
Okay. There you go.
And essentially, this list in budget and finance, is this what Will is talking about? Are the issues Will is talking about here, or are they more procedural within the office?
It's more procedural within the office. The policies exist, as you can see, and we adhere to them on a daily basis. And it's more from the standpoint of procedures that happen on a daily basis, so they're in one place. So in case, so I can go in and grab something and get a check out the door, and if one of the staff isn't available, or and then specifically some of the items that need to be done at year end, having those documented also. But the policies are in place. It's more about the daily procedures and year end procedures.
Okay, and you'll keep giving us updates on how that's proceeding.
Yep.
Excuse me. All right. Any other comments, Barbara?
Just quickly, I think this is really neat, and I like the orange thing sticking off to the side so you can see when it's coming back to commission. But like item number, employee relations policy that was established in 1977. What's that little 17 there next to it in the middle column mean?
Oh, that's just a random number that's on the policy document. We have no idea how it was established back in whatever year that was, 1977, but it's a way for us to reference that we are back looking at the correct document.
And that's something that doesn't have to be updated. It's still workable from 1977?
That is correct, yes.
Huh. Great, thanks.
Though we do have a desire to update it, but yes, it's still effective.
Okay, thank you.
Just a small nitpicking, organization and governance organization is spelled incorrectly.
What was that?
Organization and governance. Organization.
What about it?
It's misspelled.
Oh, it's misspelled.
Organization.
Organization.
And essentially, all of these are policies, the updates that will need to be approved by the commission?
Correct.
If I could just say one thing about that, I think, some of these staff will probably look at, and I could see there also being a couple that we would propose eliminating or sunsetting. But yes, either will need to be revised eventually or deleted?
I don't know, but alcoholic beverages policy has been around for so long to be done. I don't, anyway. Well, it was supposed to be reviewed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody help me here, and maybe it's because it's late. But if we look at the drug-free workplace policy, if we look at the employee handbook, and I know it's huge, the relations policy, all those things, the county has a place to start with that you could work on as a template and update them a little fast. Job candidate travel reimbursement, 2005. Let's see what other agencies do at other levels and make a decision. But a lot of these things already exist and can be worked out for us, right? Yeah.
Yes, I mean...
It's the staff time that we're talking about.
It's really staff time that we're talking about. The ones that are in the orange are the ones that have been determined to be priority policies.
Mm-hmm.
Those we definitely want to accomplish. Yes, there are plenty of resources out there from other agencies, the county, so on and so forth. We're not inventing new policies.
Okay.
I think with some of these, there's decisions to be made unique to us. The gift policy is actually pretty complex once you start thinking that through. If Coca-Cola wants to give you $1.3 million, but they want naming rights, or if a donor wants naming rights to a room and it's a modest donation, there's just a lot of if-thens that have to be worked out with some of these. Others are fairly similar location to location, so I think a lot of these will be easy to revise. The meeting room one's another one that as you start to think through it, do we start charging certain groups for the meeting room to generate some revenue? If so, what does that look like? So some of these will just take more thought than others.
Other libraries receive gifts. Other libraries have some of these issues. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but couldn't we go to other counties and county library systems and see what they have?
I've done that.
Okay.
So where it'll take some rigor is, what do we want to adopt from other systems and what don't we feel is the right fit for us? That's the part that's a little more complicated.
Okay. Go ahead.
My colleagues here on the board may have noticed on the budget numbers in the previous document that we spend almost half as much on workers' comp insurance and coverage as we do on our post-employee benefits. And I don't know if it's appropriate here. Sometimes I think I can get bogged down in where a goal belongs based on its intent. And perhaps it belongs here and perhaps it doesn't. But I maintain from the beginning of my tenure here that our workers' comp costs are out of control. They're really high. The mod rate is really high, and I would like to see it be a priority for staff to report out or to. I was invited to attend a meeting in that regard, but there's opportunity. We were talking about saving maybe $2,000 a month on IT or connectivity overhead for high-speed internet. We have potential to realize a lot bigger gain than that by reducing the mod rate that we pay for our workers' comp insurance. Again, I don't know if it belongs here, but I just want that to continue to be on the radar.
Okay. With my extreme sensitivity, I'm feeling that people's attention is waning. So let's quickly say, are there any more comments regarding this item? Thank you. And give us updates, please, so we know things are progressing. Moving on to the progress report on Goal 3, library audit. Okay. 13.1, resolution support Sonoma County, America. Basically, this is, again, something we discussed. So essentially, it's motion.
So moved.
Second.
We got a double second. Okay, any questions about this? All right, this is one where we have to all aye or nay, right? Rebecca? No, we can just say all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Then we move on to commission appointment applications for library advisory boards. Do we have any?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want me to make the motion?
Yes, please do.
I'm going to make the motion for everybody unless somebody is specifically want to do their library branch. I move by resolution that the Sonoma County Library Commission appoint the following applicants to the terms as listed. Dana Johnson to Cloverdale Library Advisory, Barbara Utter to the Roanoke Park Cotati Library Advisory Board, Barbara Hall to a vacant position on the Sonoma Valley Library Advisory Board, to Kiana Rosen and Sophia Tarantino Lenschmidt to 2 new youth positions on the Sebastopol Library Advisory Board.
Second. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. And now we are near the end. Issues that people would like to have in the monthly newsletter from tonight's meeting. Establish standing committees. And probably a list of the names of the chairs, so that once we have that, so that if the public would like to have access to the chair of the committee.
Though we didn't hear a lot about it, apparently we have a new central branch manager. That would certainly go into commission notes.
Okay.
The strategic plan?
So, yeah, the urgency of urging people, urging people for the strategic plan if the newsletter comes out soon enough.
And the survey.
And the survey.
And I don't think I get this anymore.
Pardon me?
I don't think I get this anymore, the notes. This is an e-newsletter, right?
Yeah, did it go out last time? Okay, that's what I thought. Didn't go out last month. All right. Any other things from today's meeting? I think it would be useful to say support for the Portrait of Sonoma County resolution. Other things, people, we haven't adjourned yet.
When we were going around, I will not be here at the next commission meeting.
All right. We'll have a quorum, I think. Everybody's here but the two of us.
There's somebody else.
She's not going to the lab meeting. I listened to her.
Oh.
Okay. All right. The meeting is adjourned.
You're here.
Feel like
well done.
So when the bells, you've been through that many.
across the intersection. Always yield to the pedestrians, as they have the right-of-way. If you don't see a gap in traffic, don't take a chance. Just wait until the next green arrow appears.
The City of Santa Rosa will be evaluating this new technology at locations throughout the city. It will be up to all of us to make sure we use them safely.
Santa Rosa, out there in the middle of everything.
In recreation and parks, the days begin when the sun rises. Most of our workspaces don't have four walls or a desk, but there's a lot to be done to get this place up and running. It takes